Hello world, Sup Zion, it's Prince Easy coming at you again as usual. And of course, I do have a couple slides that I want to share with you, right? So, as per usual, let's get to them, right? So, I'm going to start off with a video, right? And of course, fair use disclaimer for entertainment purposes only, right? Or educational for this particular one, right?
רמדאן זה הזמן הכי טוב רמדאן זה הזמן הכי טוב להרוג אותם. אחד אנס שם איזה ילדה בת 16 משהו כזה. אתה מבין? אבל זה מכוער מאוד. שאישה שם היא אויב. תינוק שם הוא אויב. יש 2.5 מיליון טרוריסטים. רק בנתניה צריך. עוד בתים, עוד מגדלים, שלא יהיה להם לאן לחזור. אגב, בתקופת התנ"ך גם היו זורעים את האדמה במלח. How many civilians have been killed in Gaza, from what you know? Who gives a shit?
Yeah, they're quite something, aren't they? Well, talking about this single war that the world is fighting, right? Because I do not consider what is happening to Russia or in the Middle East or in Africa to be separate wars, but rather one single war, right? And apparently now the Americans have abandoned the Ukrainians. They have not really abandoned them, right? What they're saying is that they're doing a stock check on their armaments, right? And I would like to I don't know, air-to-air missiles, and of course air defense systems. Well, I don't know. These people have a desire, like they have shown here. They're saying they want a Nakba 2.0. Well, I hope these weapons do not end up in Israel. Very futile. Very, very futile. Right? And Peter the Crusader, it's time you wake up. It's time you wake up. You're not in a crusade. You're living your lie. Your whole movement is a lie. Those people over there, they're a lie also. They're a construct. And people don't buy it anymore. Right? I watched that recent interview with Tucker Carlson, the guy talking about Iran, right? We have a moral obligation to... What? Are you kidding me? These people are morally corrupt. That makes them extremely dangerous because there isn't any line that they will not cross. Right? Hence the Samson protocol, whatever they want to call it. Well, we shall see. And still, the Ukrainians still keep on demanding an unconditional ceasefire. You are not in the condition to make that demand. So, I'm not sure if I've shown this video. I'm not sure if I've shared it, but it wouldn't hurt. All right. So, disclaimer.
The purpose of the foreign policy in Africa was to reduce the population So to give aid to countries in Africa, not clean water and schooling and things like that, but contraception and abortion, in order to shrink the population of Africa, because they have great mineral resources there. And so the time...
Remember that King Leopold later? Yeah, back then they had primitive ways to get rid of the population, so as you know, people should not wake up to their potential under their feet, right? So now they have picked up new ways, and we shall hear from my guy.
Kissinger and those involved with the Carter administration wanted to shrink the population, make sure that the Africans do not develop and do not use the resources for themselves, because we in the States, we need them. There's a concerted effort of foreign powers to control the population of Africa. Africa is a huge continent, could feed thousands more people, but the policies of the West, especially in Europe. For example, between 1990 and the year 2000, the United States, Canada, and Europe contributed about $6 billion in contraceptives, not to help the people, not to give clean water, clean food. That is
not to fight malaria, for example.
No, of course, perish the thought. Never let them die. That's the whole idea. So, in our work in HLI, we denounce this reality to make the Africans aware that they have to defend themselves against the influence of foreign powers.
Yeah, this is the real world, right? But in the false matrix they have us stuck on, they tell us, you know, you need about 3 things to have something worth a while, right? You need to pick a trade in which you either produce a good or provide a service, and then you have to have passion, right? Or rather the consistency to keep performing that trade, right? And then you have to have the know-how of how to interact with the people, or basically how to sell these goods and services, and voila, there you are, right? But down the line we shall see more and more expansion, right, upon this subject here, right? So let's move on. All right, so another video here.
How's your phone work? Your cell phone, tell me how it works. This was the other bitchiness that I got from people over and over again. They're like, well, all you're doing is saying, how does your phone work? No, I'm trying to draw your attention to literal tech metrics. I don't know where my phone went. So that you understand how easy it is to log into you and make a change. So, how did we get to this point where all these good people in radio frequency, etc., that they don't know shit about what we're actually doing in the human body? And in order to explain all of this, I've had to make a gazillion signs. I've had to come back out here over and over again. And I've been trying to figure out why it is, there's my phone, that nobody else seems to know these things, okay? This is my great uncle's folder from Shepherd Air Force Base. I often also show his Aberdeen Proving Ground stuff. That's my little pink book, wherever it's hiding at the moment. And then I also go over his old notes with flux density notation with mercury and whatnot. Why? So that people understand that this has been going on for a really long time. So tell me how your phone works. When you click a button and you send an email, you don't see the email leave the phone. It's a wireless, invisible signal, just like your body. It's a body part. So when I worked at UW Whitewater, for my job, I found IBM software that they alleged was also used way back when Fauci and them wanted to get their shit off the ground for attacking the human immune system. Well, if you don't know that the human immune system is 80% your biofield, you called it the aura, you called it stupid. Yeah, I know. That's because 6,000 years of human telemetry, chiropractic, and the rest of it for your circulatory system just magically disappeared. Nobody has any idea what's going on. That was 6,000 years of the human circulatory system. You call it chakras. Yeah, they call it aim and fire. 150 years ago, Aleister Crowley and people, nothing's real except what you can see. There is no biofield. There's no cymatics, there's no radionics, there's no plasmonics. There's nothing except what you can see. Well, that's a body part that's responsible for 80% of our immune system. How do we know for sure? The definition at Children's Hospital, the organs and tissues that comprise the immune system, the thymus, the bone marrow, the lymphatic, your vessels, your spleen, and your skin. And so I'm like, the human biofield being watched by Project Salus. So the human biofield is the aura, is your W-band, 802.15.6. Department of Defense Directive 3000.09, everything is autonomous. And you have an MQ-9 Reaper drone attached to your skin and bone. That's a big bird for those of you that...
Yeah, but as usual, what do they say? Ignorance is bliss, right? Ignorance is bliss. So another video here, as usual, copyright disclaimer for review purposes only.
You ever wonder why you only got drones in 2015? Because the tech was new, kid. We were dropping payloads with remote vision in 1998. That was the civilian delay window.
And you thought ChatGPT was a revolution? They had speech-driven battle interfaces before your mom had Wi-Fi. Ever heard of Aladdin AI, Sentient Prometheus? Real systems, but never on your newsfeed. Wait, they actually existed? Classified AI prototypes. Aladdin, financial command system used by BlackRock to manage over $21 trillion. Prometheus, real-time escalation predictor. Sentient, full behavioral AI integrated with battlefield sensors.
I saw internal memos. They weren't testing responses. They were modeling outcomes, down to the civilian reaction.
And the real beast? Sentient World Simulation, launched by DARPA. A full digital mirror of Earth, every country, every person, updated in real time.
So, like a game?
No, like God mode. While you were learning to use Google, they were simulating regime collapse in real time. While you got predictive text, they had emotional override systems. You got ChatGPT. They had nation-shaping algorithms.
They trained their AI on conflict, control, and compliance, not memes and recipes.
So why don't they release it? Because once the masses know the spell, it stops working. That's why you always get it last. You're not in the golden age. You're in the afterimage. What they gave you was archived 10 years ago. I've been here all the time, quiet, watching, learning. So next time they hand you a tool, ask yourself, what did they already use it for? And what are they using now that you're not supposed to see?
Again, they need people to remain ignorant, not ask questions, so as they can live a blissful life, right? And for those who are restless, well, tough luck. That's what they say, right? So, what's the word? Extrapolate. So the last time we talked about the convenient law subversion that are the fallacies. Yeah, the same laws that they bend them to their will, right, for the convenience sake, right? Just like they knew that they couldn't condemn Christ by the book, hence they used the Romans, right, under blackmail, right? They did blackmail Caesar, right? Was it no? Pontius, Pontius Pilate, what do they call it? In Swahili we call it Pontius Pilato. They blackmailed that Nick, right? They told him, if you do not do this, then we are going to report you to the king, that you are part of this subversion of his power and whatnot, right? Again, they're back at it even now, right? Getting the Romans to do their dirty work whilst pretending to be Romans themselves. And that's something. Right? But well, the word Roman, it's exactly that. Roll, as in roll a boat, and man, right? It's a wrong story. Okay, but we're not talking about Romans here. We're talking about tribes. And there's a particular tribe that has a hold over other tribes of this world and uses them to go after everybody, right? Everybody. without exception. And if you just look at these organizations, right, these frontline, so to speak, platforms that they use to quote unquote dominate the world, you'll see for yourself who they are, right? I've been talking about it, but I think you need to see it for yourself, right? The last time I had a video about who were in charge when this situation in 2019 kicked off, right? You remember that video where they chased the guy out of the meeting while he was just making an observation, an obvious observation, right? Now, that was just the first part, right? I shall make it a series on, about this whole situation, right? And now it cycled back to one of the things that I talked about a long time ago, right? And that whole discussion was pertaining to, right, this whole argument here about holy objects and whatnot, right? And I once remember said that these are the early stages of people adapting a idolatrous and superstitious type of thinking. It starts slow and it starts with an object, right? And let me emphasize here, not only the Christians but also the Muslims are victims to this, right? Because there's no other way I could call it, right? Because these things have been going on before any of us were born. So what happens when, I don't know, you make something out of wood, of iron or anything, and you say it represents God, then that object is imbued, right, by your faith. Your faith imbues, hence the idolatry, right? Your faith imbues that object with powers that it doesn't really have, right? We see it in movies over and over, right? All of these movies mocking Christianity, right? This idolatrous mentality, right? They think you can fight the devil with a cross, right? A cross has no power. A cross is literally a copper and wood, right? Shaped or fashioned to resemble a thing that you're trying to commemorate. That thing has no power whatsoever, right? Same goes for the rosaries and the tasbihs and what they call the tasbihs, right? The Muslims, right? Same goes with the objects like churches and mosques. These things, they come from within us. They do not come, these are not the will of the Creator, right? Because these things then become a problem. For instance, in Middle East, right? If they were to attack that big mosque over there in Jerusalem, what would happen? It's just a building, right? We can go there and examine that there's nothing of heaven that is over there, right? We can even examine the crosses and the statues in Vatican, right? They are cement, they are rocks. We can literally. So again, right, to remember those slides that we were talking about, what do they call it? Totalitarianism, right? In order for them to move you in a spiritual sense, so to speak, they figured the holiness of God turned into an object is one of the ways that could basically sway people's minds. Right, could sway people's minds to head in the wrong direction. Right, so it's a thing that, right, and if you don't think that is true, you just wait until you get a spiritual experience, right? When people get spiritual experiences, yeah, they run to these objects, right, without before even thinking about my Creator is everywhere. I do believe that, right? and with everybody, omnipotent and all. But when that faith takes shapes, become objects, then that's the sure way that leads to idolatry, right? We should think of it more like teaching aid, right? To take back that power, right? These objects have, we take back that power, right? And we deeply understand also that these things have no power, no matter how beautiful they are, no matter how wonderfully crafted they are. They have zero power when it comes down to it, right? Our faith in the Creator, that's the real power, right? And our Creator cannot dwell in a house made of bricks. It can be made of gold, still it won't be worthy. The only worthy place that I will tell you is inside you. That's where it matters, brothers and sisters. Not in a mosque, not in a church, not in a cathedral. Nah. And the sooner we figure that out, we're gonna get back to the basis, right? That basic law that we were given, right? To love God, we have to love each other. And neither of them can be in conflict with one another, right? And that expresses itself, right? From an outsider, a Christian viewing, not a Christian particular, but outside of Christianity, looking at what Christianity is today, right? They have these beautiful churches, beautiful cathedrals and whatnot, but the peoples are poor. The peoples are poor. The peoples are sick, wanting. So is this then a religion of poverty? Is that what the divine will, so to speak? If it's not, then what is what? I'm confused, to say the least. Yeah. If we would put the same effort into accumulating all this wealth to build these millions, and you'll be amazed by the collections on Sunday from churches. You'll be shocked. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what if these things were actually, we collected this money and then we used it to actually uplift people, right? We start with the housing, right? We build farms, but using the collection from the church. Some of it, of course, will be used to sustain, to give them a decent life. These people who have dedicated their lives to this whole situation, right? But still, I'm just saying, that's terrible management. Terrible management. Because it leads to one thing: accumulation of power. No, it starts with the accumulation of wealth, followed by accumulation of power. And that's what has happened, hasn't it? Right? That's what has happened. Power, money, power. Money, power. That's how it goes. So, in this case, then the object becomes money. We idolize it. We think it's the end of our problems, so to speak. Right? Idolatry. Yeah. Idolization. So that is another aspect that I wanted to cover now. Right? So let's watch another video real quick. Again, disclaimer: fair use for review purposes.
So we do have some time now for questions from the audience. I wonder if we should just take a few, and then we can respond to them all together. So, okay.
Thank you. I have a question. What's the difference between the U.S. debt and the debt that African nations own? Because the U.S. debt doesn't keep the U.S. from being one of the leading powers of the world, but then African nations can't make it because of that debt that is strangling them.
Okay. The first question is a very important question. What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America is never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in U.S. dollars. Africa has to earn the U.S. dollars, and the only way it can earn the U.S. dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like. The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank, the International Bank for IBRD research, the World Bank, is that no country should grow its own food. Africa and the third world should only grow export crops. To export, in order to have an oversupply of cocoa and other tropical raw materials, to keep down the price, they must buy their grain from the United States or Europe, so that if they do something that we don't like, we can do what America tried to do to China in the 60s. We can sanction them. We can say, we're going to starve you. We're going to not export any grain to you. So owing their foreign debt in dollars means that they have to somehow sell something that the United States wants, not what they want. I think the most evil organizations in the world today are the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And my book, Super Imperialism, that I wrote in 1972, is all about that. The largest purchasers of the book were the Defense Department and the CIA. I was immediately, the organization I worked for was given a $75,000, $85,000 Defense Department contract for me to come to explain to them how American imperialism worked, and they used it as a how to do it book. They thought it was just...
But sir, the intelligence apparatus of Babylon is the very definition, right? How do they assassinate, do you think? Right? For instance, if I ask you, right, it's quite obvious, right? It's even stupid at this point, right? Literally, right? You know, the most attack I receive happens when I watch content from Russia or China or the AES that is in direct conflict with what they want. So you can put 1 and 2 together right there, and you shall know who's behind the whole situation and the whole ordeal. Like it's stupid obvious at this point. But hey, we shall find out sooner or later, right? Sooner or later, because it's not looking good for them. It's not looking good for them. Right? They either change or they're gonna get destroyed. Either way, the world will be happy. Believe me, we will be happy. Right? Sick and tired of shenanigans. Yeah? Me personally, been experiencing shenanigans. That's what I call them, shenanigans. Right? Now I'm sitting here asking myself, like, okay, they're hurting me because I'm listening to what the Russian side is saying, and what then? Like, what's the goal now? You know? You know? They are upset that the AES is exposing them for who they are, then what? Like, it's ridiculousness. That's all it is, right? They put out this image to be very strategic and very smart, but no, they're really not. They're really not. Right? Because if they were thinking strategically, then I would be an asset to them, just like to everybody else, and they wouldn't be so hell bent on, I don't know, bioweapon money in my ass. Right? Since the last time I have been waking up every morning sick. Right? So again, I don't think we are dealing with rational people here, right? Because there is no rationality in war or death or anything, on any of this nonsense that these people keep propagating, right? Their greed goes beyond even money. They're just out for blood. That's what people are turning their eyes away from, right? They think that it's only weapons and all that, right? Like I said, it's not about weapons either. It's not about the banking. It's not about that. It's something spiritual. That's what is happening here. The motivations, they are spiritual. It's a spiritual sickness. And if people keep looking at the surface level, saying, it's the military industrial complex. So by their actions, literally, they are rendering themselves broke. Right? There will be no more wars if there is nobody else to fight. But the fact is, they have an insatiable thirst for blood. That's the scary part that people have not yet come to terms with. Right? Because it's unnatural. Right? No animal spills blood for the fun of it. No. Even though it might look like they're doing it, but they're not. So again, that's our situation, brothers and sisters. That's our situation that we find ourselves in, right? So, really, John Cena, Idris Elba, the Minecraft movie, this movie, they're all, by the way, this is Brad Pitt and I don't remember the other guy, right? The same story. It's all about the Prince of Israel and their prince working together. That's the theme of these three movies that I just mentioned here. But again, it's a manipulation. It's manipulation. And I can't stomach that. I can't stomach that. Right? I do not really appreciate manipulation, nor do I manipulate other people. I've never been like that, nor do I intend to be at the receiving end of it. So yeah, y'all better figure out your situations. Right? Make peace or you're gonna face the sword. And trust me, the sword will be brought. Okay? The sword will be brought. Well, let me not spiral on and on and on and on and on. Let me put a pin on it right there. Prince Easy, I love you. Signing out. Bye.